Okay, so welcome everyone to our Shakespeare Lovers group. And we're meeting at the start of a play, 3 years into the pandemic. So you guys have been little postage stamps for about 3 years now. But thanks for the stamina for those of you who've continued. We're starting with A Midsummer Night's Dream this season. And today we have two new members, Lisa and Nancy, and then returning members, Jillian, Dave, and David, and Sal. So typically, you guys, what I do is we start off on the first meeting doing a little bit of introduction and getting to know one another. And I ask folks to give us in about just a 1 or 2 minute summary, 4 items: your name, where you're from originally, what you do, and then your connection to Shakespeare. Okay, so your name, where you're from originally, what you do, and your connection to Shakespeare. So I'm going to get started. I'll start it for you guys. So I'm Afsaneh. I'm originally from Tehran, Iran. My family moved to London before the revolution, so I didn't really see the revolution there. I was around 13. So I kind of grew up in England part of my life. And then in my late 30s, I moved to the United States. So I've had a very eclectic life in terms of where I've lived. My background is in architecture and art and design. And my connection to Shakespeare is just by virtue of being Persian, literature is a big part of our lives. And when we moved to London, my parents used to take us to see Shakespeare all the time. But also individually, when I was, after I graduated from architecture school, undergraduate school, I went to Florence for a month, as an architecture student. And the Renaissance is what made me connect to Shakespeare, because I just fell in love with Florence and the Renaissance in a bigger way. And then when I came back to England, I started going to watch plays. And everybody here knows that there was a coincidence. It was 1987, and Jeremy Irons, that I kind of had a 22-year-old crush on, was playing Richard II. And I kind of, in a semi-shallow way, went to see him, and basically there was no turning back after. So, it happened to be one of the most beautiful lyrical plays, and his rendition of it was so beautiful. I was very overwhelmed, and combined with my own foray into the Renaissance and Florence and everything, I kind of entered Shakespeare's world back then. So that's me, you guys. Let's go to Dave.
Okay, I'm Dave. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. I grew up in Rhode Island, and I live in Maryland now. I'm a project manager in IT. I was a computer science major and a theater major, dual major. So my job is the computer science part, and my hobbies and stuff are like the theater side. And that's where my love of Shakespeare comes, is from my theater studies. I just really the thing about Shakespeare, of course, the lyricism is great, the words, but it's really, to me, seeing it from a stage point of view, like seeing it, how much of the theatrical elements are just embedded in the plays, and how much beyond just being poetry, that it's really like ingrained in Shakespeare's stage and what he was trying to do. And I'll just also add that I have a special place for Midsummer Night's Dream, because that's the first Shakespeare play I ever read. It was in 6th grade, and we actually performed it, and that was fun. It was really, it took a lot of the time of our semester, but I think it was worth it, because it really made Shakespeare come to life for us, being just 6th graders. And
did you play a role?
I did. I played Lysander.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll give you some of the Lysander parts. Fantastic.
It's funny
Oh,
though, because I haven't really read Midsummer Night's Dream, possibly since then, or maybe once since, but it all still sounds familiar to me. So it's really funny, you know. And that was a
yeah,
long time ago.
when you perform it, I think that's an example. When you perform it and you're in a performance yourself, I think it just sort of entrenches in itself in your
Yeah, I
and
think so.
pops right back. Oh, I didn't know that story. Brilliant, Dave. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
So lovely and welcome back. I think this is your second or third play. You've been with us for, I think, a year or two, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's I think my third. Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's go to new member Lisa.
Hi, yeah, my name is Lisa. I'm originally from San Francisco. And you said you were from Iran. I had an opportunity to go to Iran back in around 2000. And I was so impressed because, you know, our heroes here in the United States are presidents or generals or I don't know. And there it was poets.
Yeah.
It was I can't remember, we were in Shiraz and Shiraz,
Shiraz.
Shiraz. And it was one of their monuments was to a poet, and it was
Also,
very much part of the culture.
Even Tehran, a modern city, the avenues are named after. It's like if Pennsylvania Avenue was called Walt Whitman Avenue. All the avenues are named after the poets, Ferdowsi, Hafez, Sadi. Yeah, so Lisa, you get an understanding instantly how important these characters are.
Yeah, it was I was very impressed. And my connection to Shakespeare is strictly anecdotal. I've seen throughout my life a few plays, perhaps, and I don't know if I must have read. I'm certainly familiar with the stories, but my background is certainly in math and science. So this is a retirement sort of something I always wanted to do. And thanks to Zoom, now I can. So I mean, your thought about Zoom was how it allowed you to keep your internal life. For me, it's been a connection to an opportunity to pursue interests that I don't know how I would have done it aside from on my own. So this is fabulous. So thank you.
And just it's internal, but also external. It's kind of in and out, but it takes us much further out than we would have in person. The pandemic's had multiple silver linings. I so agree, Lisa. And so what in terms of what you do, you're a tech person, you're a computer science person?
Oh, well, I haven't worked in 30 years, but when my last job was teaching math at college. So that was my last job. And then we moved overseas and got doing other things. So
hey, a math person, beautiful, lovely. Well, welcome to the group, Lisa. I'm excited.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Let's go to Sal.
Hi, I'm Sal. Grew up in Hong Kong. I went to Canada when I was 16. Got a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I went to the States for grad school in computer science. And computers has been my career. And then I did another switch, and now I'm a Reiki master. If you don't know what Reiki is the energy healing.
Yes.
Shakespeare. When I was in Hong Kong, we, you know, in English literature class, we did Shakespeare, and I was not too into it. It was not until I saw the first play. I feel like Shakespeare needs to be spoken aloud. So that what did it for me. Watching that play, I said, wow, this is so different. Everything came alive.
Do you remember what play it was?
It was the Comedy of Errors.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a outdoor play. So that's what Shakespeare should be. Shakespeare plays should be done, like outdoors and having fun. And so I really, that's what did it for me. So since then, I'm very interested in Shakespeare plays and certainly appreciate him so much more now.
Yes, and you've been part of our group for multiple years now, so
Yes, multiple years. Yes.
multiple years, and it's been beautiful. And I noticed when you signed up that, for example, we've done a Midsummer Night's Stream. I think this is the second or third time, and I noticed that you've come to repeat gatherings, but
I do.
You seem to not mind as much as I don't mind, right? So
Right. I mean, there's so much beauty in it. I love this play.
beautiful.
In fact, the last time when it was at I think it was in the Shakespeare Theater or Kennedy Center, I don't remember now. When I watched the first time, I loved it so much. I came back 2 weeks later. I
Wow.
watched it twice in the same production. It was just magical.
Yeah, and that kind of obsessive thing is kind of good sign. That's great. To go. Brilliant, Sal. Welcome back. Always lovely having you here. And let's go to another new member, Nancy. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nancy, and I grew up in Boston, but I haven't lived there since I went away to college. And I now live in Potomac, Maryland. I've been here many years. I came to, on my day job, I run a consulting firm. Been in consulting, management consulting for a long time, and set up my own firm about 9 years ago, and have a lot of fun doing that. And then at night, have a lot of fun reading. It's my major passion. Got to Shakespeare as a college student. I was an English major. My senior thesis was on Shakespeare, and it was on 3 plays, one of which was Midsummer Night's Dream. And a little bit different from the rest of you, while I love going to Shakespeare plays and was had a subscription to the Shakespeare Theater in DC for at least 12 years, and go to the Folger and still go back many times. I find sometimes I love it and sometimes I don't. That the production of a Shakespeare play is really a representation of how the producer director sees it, and that is not always aligned with how I see it. And there are a few plays that I actually have enjoyed reading more than I have enjoyed seeing. The biggest one probably being Hamlet, which is one of my favorite things to read. And I have never seen a production of it on stage that I've loved. On the other hand, I have seen productions.
I think I totally relate to what you're saying, Nancy. Once you really love the play, like you've really internalized the poetry, when you go and see it be performed, it could either make it better or make it worse. It's not a guarantee that it'll be better. Yeah,
it's not my vision.
My experience. That's in my kind of completely relate to that. But I think it sounds like you do read it in great depth and internalize it, so that contributes to your reactions when you're you're not just going there for the fun of the performance and the story. You kind of, know the words, the phrases, and then I've had that experience, Nancy, as well, where I've seen a performance, I knew it really well, and then I was like, no, I don't like this.
Not this one. I have seen some performances with Midsummer Night's Dream, though, that I've loved. So Perfect. This is one that I get in both ways. And I'm really delighted to be here. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, lovely having you. Sounds wonderful. I'm excited. Welcome again, Nancy. Let's go to our token British person here. Now, Gillian confuses my accent is very all over the place, because as a child in Iran before the revolution, I went to an American school. So my first English was very American. And then we went to England, and then because I was a kid, it very quickly became, I started talking like this. And then I would visit relatives in America and would go back to England, and my English friends would say, what's up with the American twang you've picked up? And I'd be like, oh, because it's in my memory from my child. My accent is all over the place, but Gillian, being English, totally confuses me when she's here. So you're going to see my accent going all over the place. Gillian, welcome, darling.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here. And for this play, I love this play. I have so many good memories with it. So my name is Gillian. I'm originally from London. I left London in 1976 to come to America, and then we started our journey in the Foreign Service. So we lived almost 30 years overseas. the irony of what Afsane is saying is that when I go back to England, people immediately ask me where in the States I'm from. Really, they can't hear anymore. Whatever it is heard here is not heard anymore. So that's okay. So that's where I'm from. I came to Shakespeare relatively late, actually, but I fell in love with it from the beginning. And actually, my mother-in-law, who was very British, who lived in Georgetown here in Washington, who grew up in the theater. She just, her whole family was theater oriented. And in fact, they used to give plays, the children, there were 5 children in my mother-in-law's family, and they used to put on plays on the snooker table in the billiard room or snooker room. They would cover it with planks and sell the tickets to the villagers for a penny each, and they give money to charity. So she started at a very early age, and I learned a lot from her, actually, about Shakespeare. Already loved it. And she actually gave a scholarship. Afsane, do you know Margaret Rutherford? She's in England, she's a very famous character actress, and she played Miss Marple. That's what she was best known for. And she was actually my mother-in-law's cousin. So my mother-in-law gave a scholarship to the Folger Theatre, the Shakespeare Theatre, in memory of her. So there are connections all over the place.
I didn't know this story.
Yes, it's lovely. So I teach yoga. That's my, I've been teaching yoga for 52 years now. So I rather like it. And Afsane will tell you I have a certain affiliation, shall we say, with fairies.
Yes.
So I'm enamored of fairies.
Well,
I have fairies everywhere.
And you know what, you guys, I mean, it's just a coincidence, but my name, Afsane, it actually means fairy tale. So I've got a bit of a fairy thing myself, or story, but I'm not sure if I'm very fairy-like. I love the fairy world, though. I love that world.
Yes.
So there's a lot of fairy presences. I know you have a beautiful fairy house in your home, Gillian, which we've seen.
Yes. It's lit up for the occasion.
Oh, I'm so glad the fairies are with us. Gillian, thank you so much. And you've been with us for multiple years as well. It's always lovely to have you back.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Always lovely.
Finally, David.
Hi. So I grew up in Englewood, New Jersey, the northern part of the state, right outside of Manhattan. The first I remember reading Shakespeare was Macbeth in high school junior year, and I guess I'd like to. I still have the ambition of being well read, and Shakespeare is part of that, along with the enjoyment of it. And it's nicer to do that with other people. My studies were on the math science side and in music, but I run a small nonprofit now that I founded in the 90s that works on drug policy reform, advocating decriminalization and legalization approaches, and working on human rights and public health and criminal justice issues that come up.
Yes, and I wanted to say that you're also one of the longest standing returning members, David, as well, right? You've been with us for a very long time with the group. It's always great to see you. And David does a wonderful, David's got this kind of techie back, Star Trek references. Like Dave comes up with things I had no information about. We'd be reading a play and David would say, oh, that phrase was used as in Star Trek. It's actually so he's always added dimensions from the beyond, if you will. And it's been fun to have those references every time David comes up with them. I've filed them somewhere, David. So it's always lovely having you here as well. We're a group of 7. The 8th member was not able to join us, but this is lovely. Welcome, everyone. I'm a very visual person. The color, there's a lot of blues and whites, and then I'm red, which is good. But I think Shakespeare would enjoy this. It's very eclectic and unusual, very diverse group of people. So guys, before we start the play, again, we usually do a little introduction before the first session. I want to give you a couple of minutes review about the Renaissance itself, and how, because to me it's really, really important honoring it as one of the cultural movements that basically exited Europe from its more superstitious medieval society and synthesized the human spirit with materialism through the arts. And the church, one of the things that was really important was that the church no longer put a ceiling on learning. So classical Greek, Roman thinking, etc., became very prominent, which we see in Shakespeare, all over Shakespeare as well. And then the Florence, the epicenter, was key to this movement, and a lot of not only are a lot of the plays based in Italy, but a lot of the literary folks there, from Dante to Petrarch. Shakespeare's sonnets are all rooted in Petrarch. Boccaccio, who influenced Geoffrey Chaucer. Italy played a massive role, obviously, in this movement and to the giving birth to someone like Shakespeare. Now, of course, the English Renaissance then has its own flavor, has a much stronger artistic expression that is in theater and literature. You know, with the Italians, they had the literature, but they also was a massive focus on architecture and all the visual, the painting and sculpture and just all that visual beauty. In England, the Renaissance kind of expresses itself most strongly in theater and literature. I just wanted to have mentioned that. I think the Italians get omitted from this narrative. Shakespeare, you know, the Renaissance. Without the Italians, we wouldn't have had Shakespeare, basically. So I kind of like to honor that, just as a Italo. I don't know if Italophile is a word, Anglophile, Italophile that I am, but also because my Persian side is very much steeped in art and culture being a massively important part of life. That is not just it's not just an entertainment. It's not something you do after a day of work. It is why you live. You know, you're there to create beauty, to create literature, to create these experiences in human life. Okay, so that's a little bit on the Renaissance I wanted to have shared with you. For the group itself, this group, Lisa and Nancy being new members, if you can believe it, we just went past our 10th anniversary. So I started the group about 10 years ago, and the mission was to go through 2 or 3 plays a year with a group of people. But the mission was really more an artistic mission, because having the arts background, in my own case, when I studied Shakespeare in school, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. It was taught in a very cerebral academic way for my taste. So I kind of I missed it. It wasn't until I saw Jeremy Irons performing it, I was like, oh, this is art. Because at school, it was very scientific. I mean, it was all about compare and contrast, and it's just very cerebral stuff. And my personality, my nature was too artistic for it. I kind of didn't catch it. But later, when I understood that this is art, it really, I had to revisit it and fell in love with it. So my intention with this group was to create a kind of a inside out approach to enjoying Shakespeare. So we're not, you might buy, there are amazing books on Shakespeare out there, and I do read them often. The book might be this thick, might have 400 pages, but maybe about 5% of the book has actual Shakespeare in it. So it's an analysis. And I do think we live in an era which is extremely scientific. And I think the fact that the arts aren't exactly what they were like during the Renaissance are connected to that. So in this venture, what I try to do right out the gate is to create these handouts that help us internalize the beauty from an inside out space. So there's a lot of quotes. So my goal is to make the quotes at least be 50% of what we read. So let me just do a sample share screen of the handout. So the handout has obviously the quotes and then the narrative, some summary sections, which are lifted out of different texts. So this isn't copyrighted or anything. Occasionally the sentences are mine. If the sentence sounds a little bit zany, that's usually mine. If it sounds better, it's probably not mine. And then the Shakespeare is obviously Shakespeare. The only contribution that I kind of add here is I divide the red headings and I divide the handouts into sections where we then pause and talk about it. And that's the part of this group that I enjoy the most, because the intention of those discussions isn't just to say, oh, what is Lysander going through, but to kind of go deeper and see mind for the universal truths that are there too. It might apply to something you might be going through yourself, or someone you know might be going through, because that's the beauty of Shakespeare. These aren't just interest. The reason they've lasted this long, these plays, isn't because they're just interesting stories, rather because they're interesting stories, beautifully delivered, but also the truth in them is so universal that they don't end, it continues. So that's that with the handouts as well. So we're gonna get started. Is everybody okay? Everybody was able to either print it out or get it on your device? Excellent.
Yep.
I did want to quickly mention that this play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, unlike most of his dramas, it does not have a single source. It's a very eclectic. It has an eclectic array of references and characters, from classical Greek to Roman comedy to Celtic fairies and magic. So it's an unusual play in that sense. There isn't like a single source and then Shakespeare kind of adds his own thing to it. So this is essentially a very a complete Shakespeare creation, if you will, with obviously references from other spaces. And we're going to start here with Act 1, you guys. So usually I assign somebody to do the narration, and then I give parts to different folks. So let's have Dave Hafken play Theseus, and Hippolyta, Gillian. Before we just dive into that, you guys, Theseus and Hippolyta, Theseus is the Duke, Hippolyta is his Amazon warrior wife, who, does anyone know how he ends up getting her? How does he, they're married now, but there's something, yes, there's war, he captures her. So they had to fight, and then she became his captive, and then they get married. So there's something violent there as well. But they're a couple now, the Duke and Hippolyta, and they kind of bookend the play. So they're at the beginning and then they're at the very end. But in the middle, where we're going to go into the fairy world, where we leave the rational world of these two and Athens, when we go into the fairy world, they're absent. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff to discuss, and it comes up, and we'll go through it in the play itself. So let me narrate Theseus, Dave, Hippolyta, Gillian. Act 1, Scene 1, Theseus, Hippolyta, and Philostrate with others. The old versus the new moon. The scene opens in Theseus's palace in Athens. It is 4 days before his wedding to Hippolyta, the former queen of the Amazons, and Theseus is impatient with how slowly time is moving. Even though their nuptial hour has arrived in 4 days on the day of the new moon, the old moon is taking its time fading away for the new one to appear. The wait is prolonging Theseus's desires like a stepmother, a stepdame, or a widow, making her stepson wait for his inheritance.
Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace. 4 happy days bring in another moon. But oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires, like to a stepdame or to a dowager long withering out a young man's revenue.
Hippolyta is less concerned. 4 days will quickly be absorbed into nighttime, which we in turn dream away.
4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. 4 nights will quickly dream away the time.
As for the moon, Hippolyta isn't focused on the waning moon, but rather on the coming of the new moon, which she associates with love and marriage. The new moon's silver bow, a reference to Cupid's bow, will curve in heaven's sky and look down upon their wedding celebration, their solemnities.
And then the moon, like to a silver bow, new bent in heaven, shall behold the night of our solemnities.
Theseus asks that the young people of Athens be fetched to celebrate and help awaken the lively spirit of mirth and joy. Melancholy and sadness belong to funerals. Such a pale companion will not be welcome at their festivities. So that's the start of the play, you guys. Hippolyta hints at the dream. She hints at the forest, perhaps, that, you know, there's going to be a dream world as well. We're going to stop there and just maybe share some comments. When I was preparing it, it occurred to me that the guy, Theseus, is the impatient one. The one who's like, oh, it's 4 days. It's like the stepmother who's not giving the inheritance. It's going to take forever. Hippolyta is more optimistic. She's like, no, it's going to go quickly. Nights will turn into day, day will turn into night. There's no right or wrong answer. I just thought to have mentioned that and see if anyone has any insights about that. There's a stark difference to their approach to these 4 days.
Well, there's a sort of it's a little bit of a resignation in Hippolyta. It sounds to me just very like she's accepted her fate, you know, that Theseus has sort of imposed his will on hers. And it's kind of surprising because she's an Amazon, right? I would have expected something more fiery from. Is she the Amazon or is she the daughter of the Amazon?
She's a warrior, Amazon warrior, but
she's not the queen.
Yes. Don't see her being. It sounds like their union is now working. They have different. There's differences, but she's not rebelling anymore. She's not. Anyone else have any comments? Because something occurred to me actually as you guys read it. Because usually with Shakespeare, the beginning of the play instantly has a template, if you really go through it deeply, for much of the rest of the play. So for me, because the play has the rational world, the dream world, has these two worlds. And then we have Theseus, who's kind of in the rational world, and he's more in a linear world. 4 days is a long time for him. Hippolyta belongs more to this other world, perhaps, or has an understanding of that alternative dimension. And it's like, well, time is kind of relative. It will dream it away. It's going to be okay. It's going to go quickly. So instantly you have a feeling for these two realities which are present throughout the play.
Sunny, can I just also ask you specifically, the silver bow, the new moon and the waning of the old moon, this is very Islam, isn't it? Isn't that when Ramadan? I'm not sure it's got anything to do.
But you know what? One thing people don't understand is Iranians are I'm much more Persian than Islamic, so I don't know. So our Persian culture overrides our religious identity often.
Right.
So, but yeah, the moon, the crescent is in there, the
crescent
red crescent and all that. Yes, I don't know the reasons. Yeah.
Well, the Jewish calendar is lunar, and there was a lot of connection with what became the Persian world. The names of months are shared etymologically.
Right. That's interesting. There is a period there in the Babylonian exile where there's a lot of cross-cultural exchanges there for sure, and theological as well.
And there are records showing that when Jews arrived there in the exile, they noted similarities in stories and words that had happened from before, from some previous time.
Cool. great, David. I am glad that Gillian brought up the moon. There is a ton of references to the moon. Like someone could just rewrite this play and make the moon one of the personalities. So you're going to see the moon coming up throughout the play.
The reference to the moon, to the bow.
Yes.
You're looking at it's a beginning, and the beginning is also a Cupid's bow. So the two things really blend for her: the starting of a new marriage, the starting of new love, the starting of the new moon, and the way it looks in the sky.
That's right, and she brings optimism to it, Nancy, which is really quite contrasted with the way he approaches it. Exactly, lovely. And let's just quickly continue. There's another section. I will wed thee. Yes, Lisa.
Oh, I just had a quick thing. I mean, the thing about Cupid is, that he's referring to him. So I've been reading Ovid with a bunch of people. He's very capricious. Cupid will, you are, it's almost like fate. You know, Cupid, and you are subject to where his arrow lands. So
Yes,
I mean, I think there's something fatalistic about that.
And I love the word capricious because the love stories do become, there's a lot of capriciousness throughout the play and the lovers. So that's brilliant. Yeah.
The other thing I thought that at the beginning, he talks about she. Who's thwarting him? It's a bunch of she's, isn't it? I thought, well, that's interesting.
That's a nice take. That's a nice take. Yes. Yes. And maybe he feels that's why he's more down. I don't know. That's a nice take, Lisa.
It's sort of like he's the warrior. He's the guy who's in charge. And who are these women? A bunch of, you know.
And he's the one who's in control, and there's all these things that he cannot control. Very lovely.
Yeah.
And in fact, a little tidbit at the end here, I put it on a different section because it's so important. I will wed thee in another key. Let's continue. I'll narrate. Let's have Theseus be Lisa here. Theseus then turns to his bride-to-be and reminds her that he wooed her in violence, using his sword and getting Hippolyta to fall for him by injuring her. In stories about Theseus, he overcomes Hippolyta in battle with the Amazons and then marries her. But now he will be marrying her in a very different key.
So go illustrate. Is that where you want me to start from?
Hippolyta, I wooed thee. Are you on the?
So we're skipping. Oh, we're skipping.
Are you? Can you stay on the handout? Don't go to the.
I'm sorry. I was looking at my book.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's not gonna work, guys. Just stay here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you can go and compare them, but for the storytelling, the flow of the group, we stay with this.
Gotcha. Didn't understand. Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love doing thee injuries. But I will wed thee in another key, with pomp, with triumph, and with reveling.
So what do you think of this other key he's going to switch into? I don't know. I mean, anyone have any comments? He's like, I injured you, I captured you, and then I'm going to love you now. I'm going to switch.
I have this just occurred to me now. I have a possible music historical angle on the use of the word key. Today we might not say, you know, we don't necessarily think of different keys as reflecting different moods or characters, as we can transpose the same music from one key to another. It's a major versus minor. That's the difference in mode, not key. But that's because we use an equal temperament system in which the intervals between notes are adjusted. They're a little different from the natural harmonic intervals, and so they all line up, the 12 notes in our octave. But in the past, and some people do this still today, there are all these different temperaments, and any one of them that you use, there are actual differences in, you know, small differences in the different intervals, and so keys.
Yeah, that's
even through the classical era in the 18th century.
That's brilliant, David. Let me pause there, just because we're kind of a little over time, but I love that music reference, David. And And it also alludes to the fact there's going to be celebrations, because he then says with pomp, triumph, and reveling, there's going to be dance, there's going to be music. So wonderful, wonderful observation, David, there. Thank you for that. Thanks a lot. So now we're going to be introduced to the different sets of lovers. I did want to make a note that the theme of a daughter, because this is going to come up, the theme of a daughter who wants to marry the man of his dream, of her choice, despite her father's opposition. That theme was a common theme in Roman comedy. So Shakespeare would have come across that theme. So we have, we've got Greek with Theseus, and we've got a bit of Roman coming in now with this theme of a daughter going against her father's wishes when it comes to marriage. And some of the capricious stuff is going to start showing up, the word used. Bewitching the bosom of Aegeus's child. Let's have Dave narrating Aegeus, Nancy.
Enter Aegeus and his daughter Hermia, and Lysander and Demetrius. Aegeus and his daughter Hermia arrive with Lysander and Demetrius. Aegeus greets his renowned duke and announces Demetrius as the young man who has consent to marry his daughter. Angrily, he points to the other man, Lysander, whom he believes has cast a magic spell over his daughter's heart.
And my gracious Duke, this man hath bewitched the bosom of my child.
Lysander has given Hermia poems and tokens of love, singing love songs with a soft, feigning voice, while he has feigned his love for her. He has captured Hermia's imagination by giving her locks of his hair, rings, showy things, fancy trinkets, knickknacks, etc. All things that can influence an impressionable youth.
Thou hast by moonlight at her window sung with feigning voice verses of feigning love, and stolen the impression of her fantasy with bracelets of thy hair, rings, gauds, conceits, knacks, trifles, nosegays, sweetmeats, messengers of strong prevailment in unhardened youth.
Wow, Nancy, you can hear the scolding in Nancy's voice. I was like, I got scared there, Nancy. I was like, what have I done wrong? And then I was like, brilliant. And just a quick comment, you guys, isn't it presumptuous that the father says, oh, he bewitched her? There's no way she could have it's like his fault. He bewitched her. Tricked her. In fact, let's continue with the same narrating. The next section is the ancient privilege of Athens. Here's Nancy, and we're going to add Theseus, Gillian, and I'll play Hermia, and Dave narrating.
The ancient privilege of Athens. Lysander has stolen his daughter's heart, rendering her stubborn and harsh instead of obedient to her father.
With cunning hast thou flicked my daughter's heart, turned her obedience, which is due to me, to stubborn harshness.
Aegeus asked the good duke grant him the ancient privilege of Athens, to do what he wants with her, either marry Demetrius or be killed immediately. Theseus is a little more gentle in his attempt to persuade Hermia. Doesn't she know who her father is? He should be as a god to her, one who gave her beauty. To Aegeus, she's like a figure that he's sculpted out of wax, and that gives him the power to keep that same figure or disfigure it.
What say you, Hermia? Be advised, fair maid, to you your father should be as a god, one that composed your beauties, yea, and one to whom you are but as a form in wax by him imprinted, and within his power to leave the figure or disfigure it.
Theseus tells Hermia that Demetrius is an admirable man, and when she protests that so is Lysander, he reminds her that given her father's opposition, Demetrius must be held the worthier.
I would my father looked, but with my eyes.
Rather, your eyes must with his judgment look.
And there's a little kind of split again in the play. There's judgment and rules, and then there's like personal affection and romance. Like, what about my feelings? So what do you guys think of the older men kind of saying that, he gave you life, created you out of, his form you are but his form in wax. He's got power over you. You have to have his judgment. And she's like, well, what about my eyes? So there's a split there. Again, the theme, the split that has it, is contained in the play as well. Anyone want to share any thoughts on this little section we just did, or impressions?
Well, it's also like it's the old school versus the young, the old and the versus the new, which we had with like the old moon and the new moon, and basically it's just kind of foreshadowing a change, perhaps, like a shift from old school.
I love that.
I
love the old moon, new moon part as well, Dave. Very cool, very cool. Anyone else before we move on?
He said the figure or disfigure it. It just reminds me that the violence, it's like, wow, I mean, this is the daughter and you're talking about disfiguring her. Just
the violence where in their world, their power and their control comes before love, right? Power and control comes first, love comes second. Yes. And it's sort of, we feel that. Okay, earthlier happy is the rose distilled. So let's continue with this section. Let's have Lisa narrating this one. Lisa, are you good with, have you got the thing? So Lisa's narrating with this one. Theseus, I'll play Theseus here. And Hermia at the bottom, Sal.
Hermia would like to know the worst thing that could happen to her if she refuses to marry Demetrius. Theseus responds,
either to die the death or to endure forever the society of men.
Excuse me. He asks that Hermia consider carefully how young she is and question her passion and her feelings / her blood. Were she not to yield to her father's choice, would she be able to live as a nun, wearing a priestess's habit and forever caged up in a cloister as a barren sister, chanting to the fruitless moon?
Therefore, fair Hermia, question your desires, know of your youth, examine well your blood, whether if you yield not to your father's choice, you can endure the livery of a nun. For I to be in shady cloister mewed, to live a barren sister all your life, chanting faint hymns to the cold, fruitless moon.
People can restrain their passions and stay virgins forever are holy and thrice blessed. But a married woman is earthlier happy, like a rose that is picked and made into a beautiful perfume, rather than having blossomed just once and then withering away on a thorny stem.
Thrice blessed they that master so their blood to undergo such maiden pilgrimage, but earthlier happy is the rose distilled than that which, withering on the virgin thorn, grows, lives, and dies in single blessedness.
But Hermia would be happy to grow, live, and die like the unplucked rose. She'd prefer this before giving up the ownership of her virginity, allowing her father to command her soul into an unwanted yoke of a marriage.
So where I grow, so live, so die, my lord, ere I will yield my virgin pattern up unto his lordship, whose unwished yoke my soul consents not to give sovereignty.
Theseus goes on to urge Hermia to take time to think about her choice. By the next new moon, his own wedding day, she will have 3 choices: to be executed for disobeying her father, to marry Demetrius as her father wishes, or to live forever in a life of self-denial and austerity.
Okay, you guys, there's a lot of beauty here. The part where Theseus is saying there's a sort of theme of the Renaissance there, where, in the Middle Ages kind of had a humanity and God as very, very separate worlds. The Renaissance does this kind of bring heaven on earth thing. And so where Theseus says, the part where it starts thrice blessed, in the middle, he says, earthlier happy is the rose distilled than that which withering on the virgin thorn grows, lives, and dies. Almost as if to say the rose like savor it, taste the divine, rather than just having it sit there and, and then the imagery of the nun that's sort of separate from experiencing something holy. It's something more sensual. Very, very deep there, allusion again to the Renaissance as well. But Hermia says no, she'd rather just live that way and as an unplucked rose than to give in to her father's wishes. Anyone have any comments they'd like to add here? Sal's disappeared.
There's an interesting comparison between what Hermia is looking at and what happened between Hippolyta and Theseus, because in some ways it feels as though Hippolyta has given in. It's like, I will give in to what is better for this world. I lost. You won me by violence. I lost. So I am now going to do what is supposed to be done. Whereas we have Hermia, who is younger, saying, oh no, no, there's violence here, but you have to listen to what I want. It's my eyes.
Beautiful, beautiful, Nancy. And actually, you know what Nancy is saying reminds me also of the fact that Aegeus, the father, doesn't give her the option to be a nun. His position is either you die or you. Theseus is the one who gives her the option to be a nun, which is kind of a little unusual because, like Nancy, you were saying, he's the one who fought and captured Hippolyta. My personal take on it, because you see it in performances as well, is that maybe Hippolyta has softened him slightly. So that's why, like in some of the performances, she kind of looks over at him and kind of you see him kind of looking at her. That Aegeus doesn't offer the nun option, but he's like black or white. Theseus then says he's still in that war zone, but he says, you can be a nun. That's an option as well. So lots of delicate things, you guys. Let's move on to Demetrius versus Lysander, because Lysander is going to show up. We're going to give Lysander to Dave, because let's see if the 12-year-old pops back. Greater. I'll narrate again this time. And Demetrius, Nancy. Let me see. And there's a little Theseus at the bottom, Sal. Demetrius jumps in to urge Hermia to take the middle choice. He asks Lysander to give up his flawed claim.
Relent, sweet Hermia, and Lysander, yield thy crazed title to my certain right.
The comment annoys Lysander. Perhaps Demetrius should marry Hermia's father, the man who loves him so.
You have her father's love, Demetrius. Let me have Hermia's. Do you marry him?
Aegeus steps in and calls Lysander's comment scornful. Hermia belongs to her father, and he's giving his rights over her to Demetrius. Lysander protests and turns to Theseus to make sure the Duke knows that there's very little difference in terms of nobility and wealth between himself and Demetrius. But most importantly, Hermia loves him back. Why then shouldn't he be able to marry her?
And, which is more than all these boasts can be, I am beloved of beauteous Hermia. Why should not I then prosecute my right?
Not to mention Demetrius made love to Nidar's daughter, Helena, and made her fall in love with him. And the sweet lady continues to dote on this morally stained, spotted, and unreliable man.
And she, sweet lady, devoutly dotes in idolatry upon this spotted and inconstant man.
Theseus confesses to having heard of this and wanting to have asked Demetrius about it. He goes on to ask Demetrius and Aegeus go with him to be schooled in some private matters. He also turns to his bride-to-be and asks her how she's doing before they all exit.
Come, my Hippolyta, what cheer, my love?
Basically, Theseus doesn't have any responses to this. He's done. He's given the groundwork. It's like nunnery or death, and we're going to go. He hears them. He's like, okay, I'll figure out what this story was about Helena, but we're getting out of here. But the part where he says, what cheer, my love, to Hippolyta, in a lot of the performances, you can see Hippolyta being really upset. And he kind of looks over and is like, what cheer, Hippolyta? So maybe she's not too happy. And then they leave. they leave. It hasn't worked. We've gotten to, but we've been introduced to the arbitrary theme in the play, because the two men are the same, basically, of age, heritage, status. One of them might have sort of made Helena fall for him or something, but basically the argument is that Shakespeare sets it up that the whole situation is a little arbitrary. Why does the father prefer this one? Why do you think Shakespeare might have done that? Because it's occurring to me that it serves a purpose. Why is he making the men very equal?
I don't think it's about the men. I think it's about the father looking at his own power. This is
exactly. And I think the fact that they're equal, Nancy, accentuates the father's obsession with the power. He doesn't care that they're equal. The one that I want is the one that's going to work. So it's kind of, if one of them had a better quality, suddenly the arguments wouldn't be about power and the father's domain. This kind of sets it up to make it look, well, it's just my way. That's all. I think it's really clever.
And then also, it's showing that he believes that, again, I see as the old school, or the power, those in power have more, are more important than what, say, Lysander says, where he says, well, I do have a difference. It's, Hermia loves me,
Yes.
she's choosing me. And he's like totally disregarding that as if it's not even, a factor.
Yes. And thanks for pointing that, Dave, because exactly, like, it's about his power, but there is a small difference between them. The girl actually loves one of them. And that doesn't matter. Love is a love versus power situation, and power rules.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to see the two lovers very distressed. Everybody's left. We're going to be left with Hermia and Lysander, who are not allowed to be with one another. Why is your cheek so pale? So Hermia, very sad Hermia. Let's have Gillian, and a kind of pretty tough Lysander. Let's give it to Nancy and Lisa narrating, please.
Left alone, Lysander finds his love in poor spirits. What's making Hermia look so pale?
How now, my love? Why is your cheek so pale? How chance the roses there do fade so fast?
Belike for want of rain, which I could well between them from the tempest of my eyes.
And we're going to continue with the course of love speech, you guys. Let's continue, and let's see if there's nobody else here. So narrator, Lysander, and Hermia.
Well, that's everything he's ever read on love. It has taught Lysander that true love always faces obstacle.
The course of true love never did run smooth.
Social standings get in the way. Oh, what an obstruction, Hermia exclaims. To be too high in class status to fall in love with the person who is beneath you.
But either it was different in blood.
Oh, cross, too high to be enthralled too low.
Difference in age can also get in the way. Oh, how awful, to be too old to marry someone young.
Or else misgrafted in respective years.
Oh, spite, too old to be engaged too young.
Others choosing for you can also be an obstacle. Oh, what the hell, to have your life determined by someone else.
Or else it stood upon the choice of friends.
Oh, hell, to choose love by another's eyes.
And even if the lovers were suitably matched, their loves could be ruined by war, death, or sickness, such that it would last only an instant. A moment as fleeting as a shadow or as short as a dream, lasting only as long as lightning in the cold black night, that in an impulsive moment reveals both heaven and earth. And before you could say, behold, it was devoured up by the darkness. That's how quickly intense things are destroyed and ruined.
Or if there were a sympathy in choice, war, death, or sickness did lay siege to it, making it momentary as a sound, swift as a shadow, short as any dream, brief as the lightning in the collied night, that in a spleen unfolds both heaven and earth, and ere man hath power to say, behold, the jaws of darkness do devour it up, so quick bright things come to confusion.
It's very romantic, the course of true love. There's all these obstacles, there's age difference, class difference, etc. And then there's also, and if there isn't any difference and they come together, then all these other obstacles show up: war, death, sickness, and then it just burns out and dies very quickly like lightning, and the jaws of darkness devour it up. So quick, bright things come to confusion. Confusion here means destruction and ruin. So he's kind of pointing to love being this kind of very passing. It's not something that stays and lasts. There's sadness to it. So it's really interesting because it's a little bit like the Theseus and Hippolyta thing. The guy is a little bit more negative. And we're going to hear what Hermia has to say, and then we'll stop and have a discussion, you guys. Patience, a customary cross. I'll narrate this one. Hermia, Sal. Well, it seems to follow that lovers being thwarted is part of destiny. Hermia asks for patience to help their cause, because true love being thwarted is customary, as all other aspects of poor love's fancies, manifestations.
If then true lovers has been ever crossed, it stands as an edict in destiny. Then let us teach our trial patience, because it is the customary cross, as due to a love at thoughts and dreams and sighs, wishes and tears for fancy's followers.
That's a great attitude, a great persuasion, and Lysander likes it. He proceeds to share a plan for the two lovers to elude the Athenian law. Lysander has a childless widowed aunt with property and great wealth outside of Athens, who thinks of him as a son. He proposes that they escape to this spot. Hermia is enthusiastic about Lysander's plan. She swears that she'd meet him there.
My good Lysander, I swear to thee by Cupid's strongest bow, in that same place thou hast appointed me, tomorrow truly will I meet with thee.
So we have this little twist. The energy is so interesting because he comes in as like, oh, the course of true love never runs smooth, and either never works out or only lasts like a lightning, and it's just gets destroyed. Da, da, da. He's much more down, a bit like Theseus was at the beginning of the play, and then similar to Hippolyta, the women are more pro-love. So Hermia comes in and is like, well, maybe we need to be patient because all these symptoms are part of love. So why don't we be patient? And she has influence over Lysander because Lysander gets inspired by that, and then comes up with a theme of going to the forests and hiding where his aunt lives and just staying away from the Athenian law that's after them. So he says, okay, we'll go away. And a lot of beautiful language there again as well. So let's pause a little bit. The fact that love, that all these things are a customary cross. So let's just give patience to our trial. Any comments, you guys, of the two young lovers and their exchange here? It's really tender and lovely.
Well, there's a certain naivety in it, which is very sweet and lovely, because the fact that, Lysander sees the resolution of all this, that he's got an aunt, she'll take care of them and everything will be okay. Not really addressing, I think, the likelihood that it won't end there.
And all the practicalities, right? They're just going to go into a forest and it's going to. But I think she's given him like wings under his. She says, "Let's be patient. There's a solution," and that's what's kind of making him propose something. At least it's something. They're going to do something. He was more despairing before. Lisa.
Yeah, one thing that confuses me is why would he tell her, look, love is fleeting anyway? I mean, isn't the conclusion of that, let's not bother?
Yeah, but I think
so then the rest of this doesn't follow. I don't know.
But I think that's where he is emotionally. He's like, course of true love is like that. We're just going to have a little moment. There's just not going to be much else. He's down. That's the speech of someone who's kind of
But
down.
it's her life. It's her life that's on the line for this. So why would he say that to her? I mean,
Well,
it's
he's
an
more
odd-
upset about the love between them not working out. And I think she is at the beginning too. Is like, I'm crying. She's not crying about her life in the nunnery, and she's just crying that their union isn't going to work out as well. So both of them are just upset about the union not happening. She's not upset about I'll become a nun or I'll be killed. She's just more upset. So there's a very real love between them. She's upset about the real love between them not happening. He gets quite down and has his poetic speech of the course of true love has always got these obstacles, and he doesn't even have a conclusion with that. She then adds the more optimistic conclusion to it. Let's just quickly continue, guys, just for time's sake. We're going to be introduced to Helena here. So just like the two men are quite similar, so are the two women. And there's this arbitrary thing of, well, why does he like this one and not the other one and all that? So remember that Demetrius, who the father wanted him to marry Hermia, had also kind of made Helena fall for her. So Helena is a kind of a love-struck character. You feel sorry for her. Helena's distress, Hermia's fault. Let's have Nancy narrating, and I'll play Helena, Hermia, David Borden.
Helena enters and Hermia immediately greets her beautiful fair friend, but to Helena's chagrin, it's Hermia's fair that Demetrius, the man Helena loves, has been captured by.
Godspeed, fair Helena. Whither away?
Call you me fair? That fair again unsay. Demetrius loves your fair, oh happy fair.
Hermia's eyes are like stars, and her voice is more melodious than a lark song is to a shepherd in the springtime. Sickness is contagious and catching. She wishes that look's favor was also so. And oh, how she needs to learn with what that art and cunning Hermia has made Demetrius fall in love with her.
Oh, teach me how you look and with what art you sway the motion of Demetrius's heart.
Hermia protests that no matter what she does, for example, when she frowns, Demetrius continues to love her. Oh, Helena wishes her smiles could learn from Hermia's frowns.
I frown upon him, yet he loves me still.
Oh, that your frowns would teach me my smiles such skill.
The more Hermia hates Demetrius, the more he follows her around. But with Helena, the more she loves him.
The more I hate, the more he follows me.
The more I love, the more he hated me.
His folly, Helena, is no fault of mine.
None but your beauty, would that fault were mine. So we feel for Helena. It's very kind of teenagey, right? You had a crush on someone, he used to like you, he's got moved on, and you're kind of distressed. You're kind of putting it down to looks and things like that. You can't figure out what happened. We feel for it. It's a very young, it's a sort of young woman's broken heart. But it's happened between two best friends, so it's kind of sad as well.
Mhm.
That this has happened. Let's continue actually, parting with a sweet playfellow. I'll be Helena. Let's have David Borden narrating this time. Hermia, Gillian, and there's a little Lysander there, Lisa. Sorry, there isn't. Yes, there's a little Lysander there, Lisa. Okay, let's go.
Parting with a sweet playfellow. Hermia and Lysander will be running away. Before meeting Lysander, Athens seemed like a paradise to Hermia, but the graces and attraction in her love have turned a heaven to a hell.
Before the time I did Lysander see, seemed Athens as a paradise to me. Oh, then what graces in my love do dwell, that he hath turned a heaven unto a hell.
Lysander steps in and confesses to Helena their secret plan to flee Athens. The following night, when Phoebe, the moon, shines and is reflected on the watery glass, Lysander and Hermia plan to sneak out of Athens. Hermia says goodbye to her old friend Helena, her sweet playfellow, while Lysander wishes that Demetrius would come to love Helena as much as she loves him.
Helena do, as you on him, Demetrius dote on you.
So they share their story. They're going to elope. And Hermia expresses to us a shock that and this is a theme in the play, how emotions influence our perception. So she's like, before I saw Lysander, Athens was like paradise to me, and now it's hell. After I fell in love with him, it's now hell. So this is a common theme in the play as well, where internal dimensions, personal emotions can influence our perceptions as well. There's a lot of play between emotions and perceptions in the play. Let's quickly read the next section as well, and we'll pause. Let's continue narrating David, and I'll play Helena. Helena on love.
Left alone, Helena goes into a soliloquy, sharing with us her despair and her final attempt to win Demetrius's love. It's amazing how much happier some people are than others. People throughout Athens think she is as beautiful as Hermia. But so what? Demetrius, the person that matters, doesn't think so.
How happy some over others some can be. Through Athens I am thought as fair as she. But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. He will not know what all but he do know.
Cupid, often pictured as a blind boy with wings, best describes the qualities of love. For example, its blindness.
Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid, painted blind.
Love is to blame when it comes to Demetrius's change of heart, because before Demetrius ever saw Hermia, he showered Helena with promises and swore he'd be hers forever.
For ere Demetrius looked on Hermia's eyes, he held down oaths that he was only mine. And when this hail some heat from Hermia felt, so he dissolved, and showers of oaths did melt.
She resolves to tell Demetrius of Hermia and Lysander's escape. Demetrius will pursue Hermia and be grateful to Helena for the information. A simple thanks from Demetrius would make the effort so worth its while.
And for the purposes of this group, I don't have time to put all the quotes and things in here, but her teenage mind says she's going to betray this secret and tell Demetrius as a way to win his favor. And just a little thank you would be good enough for her. So that's what she's going to do. But she kind of uses some of Shakespeare's best known language in terms of love. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid, painted blind. That the eyes are a kind of metaphor for, it's rational, it's what you see, but love is looking from a different space. It's not looking at just the empirical reality. Again, a common theme in the play of these other dimensions to life and love, and the forests and the fairies that we're going to go into. Anyone want to share any comments there?
I was thinking about Demetrius and the moon again, because there's an inconstancy in him, isn't there? Which is very strongly related to the moon, which keeps coming up and up and up.
Yeah, and Sal's been playing the part of the moon in this segment because she keeps.
I don't know why my
She's our
connection is
moon.
not
She's our
stable.
moon this time around. Yes, Gillian, lovely comment there. And we have Cupid, who's painted, has his blindfold folded as well. So we're kind of the scene ends here. The lovers are going to go to the forest, to the magical world. And Helena is going to betray Demetrius so that he ends up going in there as well. Sorry, she's going to betray their secret, tell Demetrius. They're all going to go run into the woods, and that's where the scene ends. The next scene, we have a completely switch to a comic device that Shakespeare often shows up in Shakespeare, often with the working class folks. Multiple reasons why these scenes show up. One of them is that the audience were also made up of a diverse group, where they weren't just posh people who could afford $200 tickets. It had like a pit in front of the theater where everybody was there. He had to put a scene for the masses there. Do you know what I mean? So, and I've been listening to various versions of the play. In the American version, because we don't have quite the distinct class accent situation that the Brits have, this part in the British version, you really hear it, that they're a complete different bunch of troop of people. They're working class, they speak completely differently. And I often, I still have a lot of family in London, and I go out there quite a bit. And I have to say, I want to share with you guys this accent thing that's still very much alive in the UK. You notice it when you're traveling on the tube or the metro, if you like. So, for example, the standard recording voice that comes to give some kind of information has like in London anyway, has a really posh woman's voice. But then if you're on the train and the train breaks down and the driver comes on, on the thing, it's a working class accent. So I'm going to do you a little thing so you can hear the difference, because every time this happens on the tube, I crack up laughing. So this is the posh woman who comes on, when you're at the platform or you're on the train, the next station is coming up. So this is the voice that comes up. She says, the next station is Green Park, exit for the District and Circle lines. And you're like, okay, fair enough. Next one is Green Park, exit this. And then suddenly you're stuck in the tunnel, driver comes on. Like, driver, ladies and gentlemen, it's your driver here. We're kind of stuck for a bit. We're going to be stuck for a bit. But it's like, what? We went from the next station is Green Park, exit, and it's your driver here. It's just going to be a bit hard. And then, like, the Americans have no idea what the guy's saying, and you're in the middle of a Shakespeare play, so you've got the two worlds. So this next scene, you need those accents to do. And in the British performances, the accents have completely changed when you go into the next scene. And Gillian, you're laughing. Did it jog your memory?
You did that really well. I'm sorry.
I've been rehearsing it, I'll be honest. But my mom.
No, you haven't been rehearsing. You've been rehearsing, ain't you?
I've been rehearsing it. I've been rehearsing it. Do you know what I mean? You have to say, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, Afsani.
I mean, yeah. And then the woman comes on again. The next station is Central, Green Park. You're like, what's going on? So I don't know why they have to put the poshest woman on the voice thing, because it's when the driver comes on, you're like very thrown, Okay, so we've got the working class people. I just thought to have thrown that in because the play has this element here. Now we're switching to the driver now. Nick Bottom, a lover or a tyrant. So we have the working class troupe coming here, and they're rehearsing a play to put on for the wedding of Theseus and Hippolyta. So this is, and it's a comic interlude as well. You had some crying and sadness earlier. This is a nice comic interlude. Enter Quince the carpenter, Snug the joiner, Bottom the weaver, Flute the bellows mender, Snout the tinker, and Starveling the tailor. Nick Bottom, a lover or a tyrant. I'll narrate this one. Let's have Bottom, Gillian. Quince is the director, Sal. And there's Flute. Did I not break this section? Okay, so then we have also Flute. Let's have Lisa play flute. And that's it. Okay. Long section, this one. In this scene, the action shifts to Peter Quince, a director, and his band of amateur actors who are planning a play to perform as an interlude to perform for Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding. Bottom the weaver's self-assured personality becomes immediately clear as he starts to boss the director around. With malapropisms, we all know what malapropisms are. We're using the English incorrectly, and illogical phrases dashed about throughout the scene.
I'll only do this once. First, good Peter Quince, say what the play treats on, then read the names of the actors, and so grow to a point.
Who's Peter Quince? Sal.
Oh, okay. I thought I was Bottom. Okay. Mary, our play, is the most lamentable comedy and most cruel death of Pyramus and Thisbe.
Pyramus and Thisbe. So lamentable comedy. They're already their logic isn't quite there. Gillian, if you stay with that brilliant accent, it'd be fantastic. Because it's going to be our Bottom. Bottom is this very selfish, he thinks a lot of himself.
Oh. All right, Afseni.
Cheers, mate. Yeah. Cheers. Pyramus and Thisbe, the tragic story of two lovers who died like Romeo and Juliet, was told in Ovid's Metamorphoses. Bottom assures the gathered actors that the play is indeed a very good piece of work. So which part will Bottom be playing?
You, Nick Bottom, are set down for Pyramus.
Bottom is intrigued.
What is Pyramus? A lover or a tyrant?
A lover that kills himself, most gallant for love.
Well, that's
That-
going to need some convincing acting. Bottom will have to cry convincingly.
That will ask some tears in the true performing of it. If I do it, let the audience look to their eyes. I will move storms. I will condole in some measure.
Francis Flute, the bellows mender, is called on to play the part of Thisbe.
Flute, you must take Thisbe on you.
What is Thisbe? A wandering knight?
It is the lady that Pyramus must love.
Nay, faith, let not me play a woman. I have a beard coming.
That doesn't matter. Quince tells Flute that he'll be wearing a mask. As for his voice, he can make it as small, shrill, and high-pitched as he wants. Bottom jumps in asking if he could play Thisbe too.
I'll speak in a monstrous little voice. Thisbe, Thisbe. Oh, Pyramus, my lover dear, thy Thisbe dear and lady dear.
Quince won't have any of it.
No, no, you must play Pyramus, and Flute, you Thisbe.
Quince continues to assign roles to the other gathered actors. Thisbe's mother, Thisbe's father, Pyramus's father, and Snug the joiner will be playing the part of the lion. It's a simple role. It just needs some roaring.
Let me play the lion too. I will roar that I will do any man's art good to hear me, and I will roar that I will make the Duke say, let him roar again, let him roar again.
No, no, no. If Bottom were to roar too ferociously, he would scare the Duchess and the other ladies, causing them to shriek and having the whole troop hanged. Well, Bottom has a solution. He will, this is a malapropism, aggravate, he was supposed to say moderate, his voice. He will roar as gently as a sucking dove. It's a combination of sucking lamb and sitting dove. In fact, he will roar as if he were a nightingale.
But I will aggravate my voice so that I will roar you as gently as any sucking dove. I will roar you and 'twere any nightingale.
I love our Bottom. Great Bottom.
Yay!
Very annoying and talented at the same time. And you guys, we're going to pause here. So for me, it makes me think that Shakespeare is also giving us a little bit of insight into the difficulties a director goes through, because you've got all these personalities among the actors, like the one who wants to play every part, the one who's like, no, I've got a beard, I can't play a woman because the boys played the women. We're kind of getting a little insight into the workings of theater and all that stuff. It's very, very, it's just lovely. It's very raw. It's very raw.
And then, and just the whole concept of the play within the play, which is so something that Shakespeare uses in different ways. It's either women being, because women were played as boys. Boys played the women, and then the women pretend to be men.
That's right.
And so there's like a layer on those kind of stories, and this is just a straight play within a play, which I think again lets you expose these kind of break down that fourth wall, where
Yes.
you're speaking right to the audience in a sense.
Yes. And what do you guys think of the switch? Because before we had the lovers and they were crying and they were sad and there was Helena broken, and then the woof switch into this scene. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of that? What is the audience going through? Why he does that to the audience? he does it, but it's quite a dramatic sudden switch into something completely different.
It's to refresh things. I mean, I think it refreshes the palate, so to speak.
It's like, it's like, exactly. It fully refreshes it. And we're going to continue with bottom being very stubborn. And again, I love this. I think the way Peter Quince tries to appease him and things like that, it's an insight into directors and the stuff they go through with all the personalities. Appeasing bottom. Let's have Nancy narrating this one. I'll play Quince, and we'll keep Gillian as bottom.
Definitely.
Bottom. Do you know what I mean?
Appeasing Bottom. Quince firmly tells Bottom that the only part Bottom will be playing will be that of Pyramus, and that art alone. He does make sure to butter up Bottom. Pyramus is the most handsome, proper man that you could find on a summer's day, and Bottom is the only person who could possibly play that part.
You can play no part but Pyramus, for Pyramus is a sweet-faced man, a proper man, as one shall see in a summer's day, a most lovely, gentleman-like man. Therefore, you must needs play Pyramus.
Bottom loves the suggestion. A handsome man? Well, what kind of beard should he wear then? What color should it be? Straw color, orange tawny, purple in grain, or the color of a French coin? Quince uses a double entendre on French crown to mean the French nobility. He alludes to their syphilis, called the French disease, that used to make them go bald. So if Bottom wants a French crown color beard, that might save him the trouble of even having to fit himself with a beard.
Some of your French crowns have no hair at all, and then you will play barefaced.
The actors receive their scripts, and Quince sends them off to learn their lines. Bottom takes over again and sums up Quince's orders. They will be meeting in the woods at the giant oak tree in the Duke's forest, and they will be rehearsing their play in a most seemly proper, and courageous manner.
We will meet, and there we may rehearse most obscenely and courageously. Take pains, be perfect. Adieu.
At the Duke's we meet.
Enough, old, or cut bowstrings.
And that's supposed to be a very botched up archery term. It's not clear what it is that he says. But the commentators say some kind of botched up archery term. So, and there's a little raunchy reference by Quince himself to syphilis, and so you can imagine the part where he says, "Oh, the French crown, and you're not going to have any problem with hair. You're going to be bald with syphilis." So you can imagine the masses in the front of the theater just dying with laughter. It gets raunchy. It's working class. It's got all this stuff. So so it gets a little raunchy. It gets the class thing. It's just like a chaotic, funny scene that it wraps up with. And Gillian, oh my goodness, what a brilliant bottom you played. What I love this bottom personality who wants to play all the roles. He just wants to take over. And I think it can apply, Nancy was saying, you have your consulting for anyone who has in a leadership position, you always have these personalities who show up and they're trying to take over. And I think Quince is quite masterful in terms of limiting him to his sphere by flattering him and saying, well, no, but your character is so handsome and you're the only person who can play it, and just sit here. So it's you just feel for Peter Quince and how he's trying to get the troupe in order, using his managerial style as well. Although he joins them with the raunchy joke in the middle there, so he's not completely distant from them. Anyone have any comments about this scene, which we're wrapping up with all the stuff and bottom and da.
Well, I was thinking that that cut that you mentioned earlier, that switch from this very dramatic scene into the more comic one. It's a device he uses a lot, isn't it, Shakespeare? It's sort of like we're going to leave you at the edge of the cliff there, right?
Yes.
And we'll come back to it, but right now we're going to stop right there.
And
that
actually, it is, they are about to enter the forest, which they don't. We
Yes,
don't, you know.
yes.
And then we're going to go back. We're going to now see these people and have a laugh, have a good laugh, as the English say. And it gets raunchy, it gets crazy, it's annoying. There are all these characters, and he also takes us. It's kind of, there's something magical the way when Dave says he enjoys the theater performances. This particular play in this the troupe that play within the play, we enter the director's brain world as well, because all the issues that he has with these personalities, and they're going to have props that they need to use later and things like that as well. Anyone? So we kind of, it's not just that we go from the rational world into the woods, we also go from the world of the play into the world of the director as well.
Which is outside the play, right? So
outside the play, and he's saying, like, look what I had to, you know, don't, you know, this is what I'm going through as I'm creating this stuff for you, telling the, you know, the audience kind of gets a little glimpse of that as well.
yeah.
Anyone have any comments for us to wrap up, you guys?
Just one
We should be
thought.
honest.
I think that bringing all of these different groups together in the first act, what it does is it broadens the play, so that instead of looking just at the love triangle or just at one piece, we're positioning it within the whole of society. And that's what all comes together in the woods, is everything. So
That's right. And you kind of see that there's more to life. There's other things going on in the world. Yes, brilliant, Nancy. Anyone else want to add anything?
Afsane, your impression of what goes on the British tube, you should put that on YouTube. It will go viral. It will go viral.
I think I might be there. Like, my mom was, well, I was like, don't be so cheeky, you know, there'd be like this Iranian woman making fun of the English, like, don't do that. I'm like, but mom, you know, I experience it every time I come from America. The woman is saying, let me get the lines. The next station is Green Park. It's literally like this. The next station is Green Park. Exit for the district and circle lines. And then 2 minutes later, the driver comes on. It's all not working out, you know. So, and every time I go through it, I'm like, oh, I don't have these experiences in the US. This is so bizarre. But yeah, I did think to throw that in, especially with Bottom and the change in the class structure in the play as well. Again, in the American performances, you guys, you don't feel it as dramatically, because there is some accent changes, but not the night and day thing that we have in the UK.
And I just want to also throw out that, like, typically in Shakespeare, like, there are three different classes that are represented, like the nobility / controlling group, the middle group, which is like rebelling against that possibly, and then the working class, you know, and like and so we've got that third group that, you know,
yes. And, you know, I think also they're all in the audience too, Dave, right?
Right. They're all
the theater at the time. It had people from the Southeast in there, you know, it didn't just have wealthy people going to the Shakespeare or the Folger. It had, like, everybody was in there.
Everyone went, and it was
and the play catered to everyone as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of probably was understood, oh, this is for them now, you know. It's like, okay, let's, you know, and all of that.
And it was all the people, like you said, the people on the front and the bottom, that's the working class group that they would you know,
they'd be drunk and vomiting and things. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, they were eating, I think they ate peanuts and stuff like that.
Like, you know, someone would pass out, all kinds of stuff. So it's catering to them, and I think there's a lot of respect in that, right? To make sure everybody's covered.
Everyone's happy. Yeah.
And everybody's happy. I did, before we wrap up, you guys, say that we're meeting every 2 weeks. That's been the pattern, and so I usually post by the end of the first weekend, by tomorrow night, the gathering for the weekend of February 25th and 26th, and we kind of soldier on, as the Brits say, and just absorb the beauty, the comments, our own interaction and all that, and carry on with this play. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Lisa and Nancy, welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you
Oh, by
so
the way,
much.
how much, so will you do all of Act 2 next time?
Yeah,
Is that your
it's an
plan?
act per gathering. Yes. So we just did Act 1, and then we're going to do Act 2 in 2 weeks. 2 weeks time.
Okay.
Yes. So can I just quickly do a group picture before we go? Is that okay? Because I kind of create a collage to put on the meetup site, and I use your little faces. I enjoy using. Okay, so. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, guys, and then I'll have a quick little word with you before I go. Where's the stop the recording? Where's Bottom when you need him?